Hello there, welcome to Planet America's Situation Room. I'm John Barron.
I'm Licciardello, and once again, we have a situation.
We are following some breaking news. Elon Musk is blasting a massive spending bill backed by President Trump.
This massive, outrageous, pork-filled congressional spending bill is a disgusting abomination.
Elon Musk is out and he's not happy.
And Trump doubles down on tariffs after two courts rule most of them are illegal. But first...
US Defence Secretary Pete Hegseth has issued a stark warning about a possible war with China over Taiwan this week.
Any attempt by Communist China to conquer Taiwan by force would result in devastating consequences for the Indo-Pacific and the world. There's no reason to sugarcoat it. The threat China poses is real, and it could be imminent. We hope not, but it certainly could be.
Hegseth was speaking at the Shangri-La Defence Dialogue in Singapore, where he called on America's Asia-Pacific allies, including Australia, to follow the example of NATO partners like Germany and boost their defence spending.
NATO members are pledging to spend 5% of their GDP on defence, even Germany. So it doesn't make sense for countries in Europe to do that while key allies in Asia spend less on defence in the face of an even more formidable threat.
So in Hegseth's view, China is a more formidable threat than Russia, and a Chinese invasion of Taiwan could be imminent. Hegseth also raised concerns about low levels of military spending with his Australian counterpart Richard Marles in Singapore. Australia's defence spending is currently just over 2% of GDP and projected only to increase by 1/3% in the next decade. Meanwhile, French President Emmanuel Macron had a warning of his own about the rivalry between the United States and China.
I do believe that the main risk today is a risk of division of the world and a division between the two superpowers. And the instruction given to all the others, you have to choose your side.
Well, for more on these many warnings, we're joined by Nicholas Burns, who served as the United States ambassador to China under President Joe Biden. He was also ambassador to NATO during the presidency of George W. Bush. Ambassador Burns, welcome back to Planet America. I wonder, what did you make of Secretary Hegseth's warning this week of an imminent threat or war with China? And if so, what would be the implications of that?
You know, I think the way I've always thought about this is that we who want to see Taiwan preserved as it is need to be ready at any moment for any eventuality. And that's given certainly in the Biden administration, when I was ambassador to China, it gave us a sense of urgency in terms of transferring military assistance to Taiwan, trying to help Taiwan become a tougher nut to crack, if you would, in terms of deterrence, with its own level of preparedness. And I saw the Secretary Hegseth's statement. I've been out of government now for 4 months, but our view was that this would be a very difficult combined forces operation, a Chinese invasion, cross-strait invasion into Taiwan, and that the PLA seems to be in a certain degree of turmoil right now with so many of its senior commanders being fired. I don't want to second guess our Secretary of Defense at all. But I would just say that I think most people, most experts around the world would say that China wants Taiwan back into the fold, where it hasn't been since 1895 in the Qing Empire. But they have to think very hard about the risks associated with it. And the response, certainly in terms of sanctions from the international community, would be very aggressive. And so that's how I would look at things, that the Chinese are capable of this, but whether it's imminent, I think that remains to be seen.
If Taiwan does turn into a military conflagration, though, is America ready for that?
Well, you know, I think, as you probably know, for the last half century, every American president has followed a policy of strategic ambiguity and have not answered that question in order to keep the Chinese guessing. But I think if you look at what the Trump administration has done in the first 4 months of its time in office, they have delivered arms to Taiwan. They have been unstinting in their support for the status quo across the Taiwan Strait, and I think that's very good that they've done that. We've made it clear to the Chinese that that has to happen, that the Chinese need to commit themselves to a peaceful resolution of this dispute, which, of course, they refuse to do, and that given the importance of the Taiwan Strait as a critical international waterway for commerce and for shipping, a cross-strait invasion by China would have a severe impact on the global economy. So all that combined, I think there's been greater international pressure on China not to engage in a cross-strait invasion. But our watchword was you always have to be ready, and you always have to help Taiwan to stiffen its defenses.
And Nick Burns, how has Russia's invasion of Ukraine and the Western response to it affected China's thinking? And do you think it has made a Chinese invasion of Taiwan any more or less likely?
It's hard to say it's more likely, because I think the Chinese have learned some lessons here, watching how well the Ukrainians have done in holding off a force far superior in numbers, the Russian army. The Ukrainians have been brilliant. We saw just over the past weekend that Ukraine has cards to play here with the drone attacks on Russian airfields, not just in the western part of the Russian Federation, but all the way over to Siberia. It was actually quite significant that this happened. So I think the Chinese are looking at that, and that a smaller defender using drone technology and modern asymmetric warfare can be very, very imposing and effective in holding off a larger force. The second lesson that I think the Chinese are looking to learn is how much does the international community stand up for Ukraine as we hopefully approach at some point a ceasefire and some kind of stalemate negotiation. And if Putin gets away with his crimes in Ukraine, if he's not made to pay for them, if the United States decides not to support Ukraine militarily or with air power, then I think the Chinese might draw the conclusion that they could get away with a similar exercise in Taiwan. So I do think it's a very good question that you asked. I think these two crises in that way are linked.
Now, Ambassador, there's been a suggestion lately that Trump's broader strategy is to peel Russia away from China, to leave China isolated. Do you think that is his goal? And if so, is he making progress?
It may have been a goal in the first weeks of the Trump administration, because we heard some Trump people say exactly what you just recited, and that is we ought to try to get closer to Russia and China are, it's not a friendship that will last forever. I think the chances of the United States peeling Putin away from Xi Jinping's embrace are practically nil. Putin and Xi Jinping are very close friends. They've met over 52 times in the last 13 years since Xi Jinping came to power. The two countries are aligned right now, China clearly supporting Russia in its brutal invasion of Ukraine, and the Russian Federation supporting China in a multiplicity of ways. They're all also acting with both Iran and North Korea. So this alliance of authoritarian countries led by Beijing in Moscow, I think, is very strong. I don't think there's anything we could offer Putin that he would trust. He's a cynical person. He knows that there's widespread opposition to him in the United States across our political spectrum. So I don't think it's going to be possible. People are calling it a reverse Kissinger, a reverse Nixon from 1972, the Nixon to China opening. I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. Now, 30 or 40 years from now, some of the territorial disputes between Russia and China from the Romanov and Qing dynasty era, they could come bubbling back to the surface to make relations between Moscow and Beijing problematic, but not now.
Ambassador Nick Burns, thank you for being with us on Planet America.
Thanks very much. Great pleasure to be with you.
For now, of course, the US-China rivalry is playing out in the form of a trade war. The Trump administration was told by a New York-based Court of International Trade last week that most of its so-called reciprocal tariffs imposed under the 1977 International Emergency Economic Powers Act are, in fact, illegal.
The court ruled that the law does not give the president blanket authority to set tariffs. The administration immediately appealed the decision.
That appeals court granted a temporary stay, meaning the tariffs remain for now, despite a second federal court ruling also coming out against the use of that 1977 Act. On his social media site, Trump was fuming, making it about much more than tariffs too.
If allowed to stand, this would completely destroy presidential power. The presidency would never be the same. This decision is being hailed all over the world by every country other than the United States of America.
Yeah, Trump's team has been trying to use this ruling to continue their campaign against the judiciary. Take Steve Miller, for instance, tweeting out, "The judicial coup is out of control," even though in this case, the supposed judicial coup is conducted by 2 out of 3 Republican-appointed judges, including a Trump-appointed judge. Now, just to be clear, tariffs are taxes. Congress has the power to levy taxes. It's pretty simple stuff, especially when Congress has provided a number of legal avenues for Trump to impose tariffs if it could be bothered to accept some kind of limitations. Section 122 of the Trade Act allows instant tariffs as long as they aren't above 15% and not for more than 5 months. Section 301 of the Trade Act allows unrestricted tariffs, but only after an investigation shows the targeted country is restricting US commerce in unjustifiable ways. Section 338 of the Tariff Act allows up to 50% tariffs on countries that the president deems to have discriminated against American goods, but that has never actually been used before, so there's a little bit of a legal question mark over that one. Finally, Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act, it allows the president a lot of freedom to impose tariffs for national security reasons, but only on particular sectors, like, say, steel. And Trump knows all about that one, doesn't he, John?
Oh, yes, he does. This refers to a speech to steelworkers the president made in West Mifflin, Pennsylvania, that President Trump basically doubled down, announcing that tariffs imposed under that 1962 Trade Expansion Act would now be increased.
We're going to bring it from 25% to 50%, the tariffs on steel into the United States of America, which will even further secure the steel industry in the United States. Nobody's going to get around that.
And if right about now you're starting to think that Trump is just making up trade policy on the run, turns out he kind of is.
I said to the group, would you rather have a 40% increase? Because I was thinking about 40 when I came. I said, would you rather have a 40% or a 50%? They said, we'll take 50.
Sure they will. Trump was in Pennsylvania to announce what he called a planned partnership between United States Steel and Japan's Nippon Steel, which will create, he says, at least 70,000 jobs and add $14 billion to the US economy. Nippon Steel was blocked from buying US steel by Joe Biden on national security grounds. Details of Trump's partnership are, at this point, fair to say, a little bit murky, Chaz?
Yeah, but I got to say, I reckon this Nippon Steel sale, no-brainer for Trump. It's true he was originally against this deal.
I would block it. I think it's a horrible thing. When Japan buys U.S. steel, I would block it instantaneously, absolutely.
And as John said, Biden was against it as well. I think they were both trying to suck up to Pennsylvania before the election, to be honest. But never made much sense to me. Nippon Steel was offering to invest almost $3 billion in modernising US Steel, money they needed, by the way, as well as keeping its headquarters in Pennsylvania. So I don't see the problem with that. Biden rejected the buyout supposedly, like John said, because of national security reasons, but that didn't make any sense either. Japan is one of America's closest allies and its top source of foreign direct investment. Where's the security risk with them? Especially when America only needs about 3% of its domestic steel production for defense purposes. And during the war on terror, the domestic steel industry was too inefficient to even be useful for the Pentagon. That's why they need the investment from Nippon Steel now. So I was less than surprised when, after the election, a bunch of Rust State Republicans worked on Trump to change his mind. And then the deal became even more of a no-brainer when Nippon increased its offer to include the $14 billion investment that Trump was referring to, including a new $4 billion steel mill, and that's on top of the $14 billion price tag on top of all of that. So this deal did make sense, I thought at least, certainly more than raising steel tariffs again to 50%. You know what I think this 50% tariff is about, John?
What's that?
I reckon it's about this.
Mr. President, Wall Street analysts have coined a new term called the taco trade. They're saying Trump always chickens out on your tariff threats, and that's why markets are higher this week. What's your response?
We have the hottest country in the world right now. 6 months ago, this country was stone cold dead. We had a dead country. We had a country people didn't think it was going to survive, and you ask a nasty question like that. It's called negotiation, but don't ever say what you said. That's a nasty question.
Trump really didn't like that.
Niggled him.
Oh, that Trump always chickens out concept, he hates that. So now I think he's trying to be the big man. I suspect he's going to be harder on tariffs now than ever before because of that. As one Trump ally told Politico, I don't think Trump can back down now because of this taco theme. He's clearly super irritated by it, and it's like a challenge to his very manhood now. Which makes this period now interesting, John, because it seems like China has actually been stiffing America this week. The US trade rep says China has still not resumed exports of the rare earth metals needed for cutting-edge electronics. He said China continues to slow down and choke off things like critical minerals and rare earth magnets. Now, of course, that was the main reason Trump backed down from his super high tariff rates against China, because those rare earths are critical for America at the moment. They're just about to hit a shortage. So this was pretty confrontational from China. In retaliation, America has suspended some sales to China of critical US technologies, including those related to jet engines and semiconductors, amongst others. Now, that's all fair enough. But still, between China genuinely screwing Trump around and this taco thing, this could be a really delicate time for American tariff negotiations, so I reckon stay alert.
Yeah, one way or another, it's always about Donald Trump's manhood, it seems. Former President Joe Biden, meanwhile, made his first public appearance this week. It was following last month's diagnosis of advanced prostate cancer, of course, and he told reporters in Delaware the prognosis is good, and he says his treatment is underway.
It's all a matter of taking a pill. See, my bones are strong, I haven't penetrated, so I'm feeling good.
Feeling good, but sounding frail and older than his 82 years, Biden remained defiant when he was asked by reporters about that recent book whose authors claim that his physical and mental decline in office was covered up by White House staff.
And there's also been a lot of discussion recently about your mental and physical capabilities while you were in office.
You can see that. I'm mentally incompetent, and I can't walk, and I could beat the hell out of both of them.
Yeah, still threatening to beat up reporters. Meanwhile, President Trump is pushing all sorts of conspiracy theories, including that Biden staffers were using a so-called auto pen with Biden's signature on it because Biden himself wasn't capable of making decisions or even writing his own name.
I understand he signed almost everything with an auto pen. It's a very dangerous thing. It really means you're not president. Whoever operated the auto pen, and we think we know who that is, and it was actually more than one person, but that's not what the presidency is all about. I hardly used it.
And then Trump used his social media account this week to repost a bizarre claim that Joe Biden is, in fact, a robot.
There is no Joe Biden, executed in 2020. Biden clones doubles and robotic engineered soulless, mindless entities are what you see.
Having an American president repost such an outlandish claim, even impossible jest, had some of his followers going right off the deep end. Some highlighting changes to Joe Biden's face and signature over the years. Others were particularly fixated on Joe Biden's ears. All sorts of alleged evidence of Biden being either a robot or dead or impersonated by body doubles started to flood Trump's Truth Social.
It's the body double! It's the body double! Hey, Joe!
Oh, the cops don't even want you!
This is the one that you see on CNN, but where's the real Joe?
And then there was this piece of inanity.
Oh my gosh, that's a mask. Holy cow.
He always had flight.
The likely explanation, of course, a lot more mundane. While Biden has never publicly admitted to having had plastic surgery, it's pretty clear he has. Experts have speculated that Biden has had hair transplants and 1 or 2 facelifts. But at the end of the day, if Joe Biden was a robot or a body double, you'd think they'd have gotten one that would have done better than this.
Yeah, it's really stacks on Biden right now. No rumour is too unlikely.
This Secret Service whistleblower actually was assigned to Biden, and he told me that Biden used to get lost in his closet in the mornings in the White House. I mean, the guy literally stumbling around in the White House residence couldn't find his way out of his own closet.
They got big closets in the White House.
Yeah, apparently.
Sure, mate. But if we go back to that auto pen thing from before, Trump went on about that quite a lot.
I mean, I think the auto pen is going to become one of the great scandals of all time.
But it's not just Trump who's selling that angle. The House Oversight Committee has an entire investigation right now into what they call the cover-up of President Biden's mental decline and use of auto pen. But why the auto pen? What's the point? Chair of the committee, Jim Comer, says, "We don't believe that using the auto pen makes these executive orders and even these pardons legal. Hopefully this will benefit Trump in court." Aha, so that's what this is about. It's about helping Trump revoke Biden's legacy. An energy interest group is also trying this same tactic. They're singling out 8 executive orders about domestic energy policy that they want revoked, and they're speculating that since Biden didn't speak up about the orders, they might have been signed with an auto pen and he might have been unaware of them. So this is seeming a bit less funny now, John. And we should note, by the way, the use of auto pen, perfectly legal, as long as the president's aware of it. And there is zero evidence that Biden was not aware of it. In fact, I can only think of one president who has openly admitted to being unaware of one of his own proclamations.
I don't know when it was signed because I didn't sign it. Other people handled it.
And yet, lo and behold, that proclamation still got signed.
If you look at the proclamation invoking this wartime power over the weekend, it's on the White House's website. It is listed as a presidential action, and it reads, "By the President of the United States of America." But even further than that, when you look at the version that is filed in the National Register, it bears President Trump's recognizable signature right there at the bottom.
I wonder how that happened, John.
Very curious, Chaz. Elon Musk was given a slightly awkward send-off from the Trump administration. His last day at work was on Friday, and it saw the president hand him a golden key to the White House.
Thank you, Elon.
Thank you.
Take care of yourself.
Thank you.
But this send-off didn't go entirely to script. Elon Musk was sporting a black eye, which he says he received after telling his 5-year-old son, whose name is XA12, to punch him in the face. Well, if you'd been named that, you'd punch your father in the face as well. And Musk then brushed away questions following a New York Times report this week that also claimed that he'd been using a lot more drugs than previously disclosed, including taking so much ketamine, a powerful anaesthetic, that it was affecting his bladder. The Times also claimed that Musk had taken ecstasy and psychedelic mushrooms and that he travels with a daily medication box containing the stimulant Adderall.
That New York Times? Let's move on. Okay, then next question.
Although then, about 40 minutes into this press conference, Elon did look like he was maybe on something, or perhaps he was just stretching out his neck after being whacked in the face by that kid of his.
Yeah, he's also had neck surgery as well, fusion, so he might have a stiff neck.
Yeah, it could well be, but he's in the damned Oval Office. And earlier, he'd been completely fixated on the gold highlights that Trump has had painted on the ceiling plasterwork.
Isn't this incredible? Look at this incredible. Look at I mean, it's stunning, I think.
All in all, a fittingly weird end to a weird chapter in American politics where the world's richest man got his kicks from popping pills and taking money away from some of the world's poorest people. He ended up with a bit of a black eye, literally and figuratively, Chaz.
But is it the end of Doge, John? Because according to Elon, maybe it's not.
This is not the end of Doge, but really the beginning. My time as a special government employee necessarily had to end. It was a limited time thing. It's 134 days, I believe, which ends in a few days. But the Doge team will only grow stronger over time. The Doge influence will only grow stronger. And I'm confident that over time we'll see $1 trillion of savings.
That grab does raise an interesting question, though, John, which is, if being a special government employee means a time limit of 130 days, why did Trump limit Elon by making him a special government employee? Could it be because, unlike cabinet members, special government employees don't have to publicly disclose their financial interests or potential conflicts of interest? Their financial disclosures are completely confidential? Maybe. And maybe the ethically slippery nature of Doge was baked in from the very beginning with this special government employeeship. You know, that limit, though, doesn't mean Elon's gone for good. Because that 130 days is just for a 365-day period. And then next year he can return and they can start all over again. So we might not have seen the end of Elon for this administration quite yet, John.
Maybe or maybe not, because the tweet that he sent overnight could amount to a bit of a burning of a bridge. This is what Elon said. "I'm sorry, But I just can't stand it anymore. This massive, outrageous, pork-filled congressional spending bill is a disgusting abomination. Shame on those who voted for it. You know you did wrong. You know it. Safe to assume that this guy who forked out about $300 million to help Trump and other Republicans last year might be thinking about keeping his own wallet shut for a while.
Yeah, I don't think Trump liked that at all either. Now for a little update. Last week we did spend a bit of time talking about the Make America Healthy Again, or MAHA report. This is the beginning of RFK's vision as Health Secretary for how to reduce chronic disease, especially amongst American children. Now we were quite kind to it, I thought, you and me.
Fair enough, yeah.
After all, while it did definitely accord with RFK's perspective, most of it was fairly unobjectionable, and at least they backed up RFK's contentions with some evidence for once. Or did they? Because RFK described the report as harnessing gold standard science, citing more than 500 studies and sources, but it turns out those citations were rife with errors, from broken links to misstated conclusions. In fact, 7 of the cited sources didn't appear to exist in the real world at all. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt was asked about this, and well, I believe the technical term is she lied.
Does the White House have confidence that the information coming from HHS can be trusted?
Yes, we have complete confidence in Secretary Kennedy and his team at HHS. I understand there were some formatting issues with the MAHA report that are being addressed, and the report will be updated, but it does not negate the substance of the report.
Some massive formatting issues, John.
Nice excuse.
But then the speculation began in earnest. People began to wonder if maybe the report had been assisted by AI, because out of the 522 footnotes, at least 37 of them were repeated, and at least 21 of those links dead. Then the smoking gun, some footnote URLs included the phrase OAI site. Now that's a marker indicating the use of OpenAI.
Whoops.
So what that indicates is not only did someone use AI to compile the report, but no one bothered to even check it to make sure it was accurate, so they left the citations in. Now, to be fair, that doesn't mean RFK was aware of how sloppy his report was, because he might not be the world's most hands-on administrator. Just last week, he also said this.
As of today, the COVID vaccine for healthy children and healthy pregnant women has been removed from the CDC recommended immunization schedule.
But then this week, we discovered that the CDC did not actually remove the coronavirus vaccines from the childhood schedule at all, as Kennedy said it had. Instead, they changed the recommendation to be shared clinical decision-making, which means children can get vaccinated if their parents and doctors agree. A spokesperson said that was the kind of change that RFK was talking about. He said the old recommendation was to get a COVID shot for a healthy kid, whereas the new recommendation is go talk to a healthcare provider. Now look, I'm not complaining here. The new recommendation does allow parental choice while still compelling insurers to cover the shots, which was the concern about removing the COVID recommendation in the first place. And so this does actually seem to me like a best of all worlds scenario, but it might also indicate that RFK has no idea what's going on. He might be more of a figurehead than a proper administrator, and maybe HHS is kind of running itself at the moment. That might be something to keep an eye out for.
He's America's most formidable reviewer who can make or break a news organization with one question.
Who you with? Who you with? Who you with?
It's time for At the Newsies.
Who are you with? I'm Michael Burnbaum from Washington.
You've lost a lot of credibility.
Who are you with? Wall Street Journal. That's well, you people treat us so badly. Wall Street Journal has truly gone to hell. Who are you with? Up close, sir. Who? Up close. I'm no wonder. I thought they died.
Who are you with? That's why you're Yahoo and nobody knows who the hell you are.
Secretary, who are you with? New York Post. Oh, well, I like the New York crowd.
The reviews are in.
And that is all for another trip to Planet America. We'll see you at the same time next week.
And we have Planet America's Weekend Edition on ABC News at 8 p.m. Eastern on Friday night. See you then.
Bye-bye.